Hey guys, it's Kevin in my review for Stuber. And what Stuber is essentially about is we center on the character of Stu, who, what do you know, is an Uber driver, and basically he is someone who has very much been struggling. He hasn't really been, getting the best ratings and things like that, so one day he picks up this passenger named Vic, but what he doesn't realize is that Vic is actually a cop. He is hot on the trail of these drug dealers, and Stu very quickly realizes that this is not going to be a normal ride at all, and that's all I'm going to say. So Stuber overall, I was very excited for this film. I mean, this to me just looked like a really fun summer comedy, and that's really all I wanted to be. I mean, you have Kumail Nanjiani and Bautista, two actors who I very much love. I think they've been doing some really great stuff recently, and they've both proven that they can be great comedic actors when they have the right material. So I was really thinking that Stuber was going to serve them well. And I have to say, Stuber definitely lived up to my expectations. I had a lot of fun with this film overall. It's nothing amazing, but it is one that I find myself having a very good time with, and we're just getting to right now, starting off with the cast. And definitely that's one of the best things about this film. Like I said, I think one of the biggest draws going in is going to be the cast here, and for good reason. I mean, both of them do a really great job. Kumail Nanjiani, as usual, does a very strong job here for sure. As someone named Stu, he's someone who, he's a bit of a wimp. He's someone who he kind of just takes things and things like that, but he also is obsessed with Uber driving. He wants to get those star ratings. He wants to get good passengers. He just wants to do really well, and I think Nanjiani did a very good job here. He is very much the reactionary type of role, and, he's really thrusted into this situation that he's really never been in before, and I think he actually did a really good job, and he actually does undergo a pretty big transformation that I think Nanjiani handled quite well here, and overall, as usual, he did a really great job. But it really is Bautista who I think is the real standout in this film. He does an incredible job. And look, Bautista's always fantastic, but this film very much shows that he very much can lead a film. Vic is someone who, he's gone through a lot of hardships in his life, not just because he is a cop, but there's a lot of personal stuff that he's undergo. And I think Bautista does a really good job showing that emotional baggage, but also the comedic timing is just great as ever. I think he does such a fantastic job here. And the chemistry between these two is absolutely the best thing about this film. There's a real palpable chemistry there that you really do feel throughout this entire film, and I think they work very well together overall, and the film really does, I think the film really does benefit from its two lead actors, and it's definitely one of the best things about it, without a doubt. As far as the rest of the cast goes, everyone else does a fairly good job. Uwais is someone who's always a standout, and he definitely does do a good job. Though he doesn't have as much screen time as you might expect, he definitely makes the most of it for sure, and I really did like what we got from him. Gilpin is always an actress I respect, and for what she has, she definitely does a really good job. Natalie Morales, I thought, was definitely really good here for sure. Gillan, I definitely did like. She's not in the movie very much at all, but I thought she definitely did do a really good job. Really, there were only two performances that I really did not think were that great. One of them was Mira Sorvino. She plays the main sort of boss of Vic. I just didn't really think she was that great. At first, I thought she was okay, but in the third act, when she started to get a lot more, I thought she was really over the top and just not in a suitable way. It just was, I just wasn't really a big fan of her. And unfortunately, though, the worst of them all is Jimmy Tatro, who I hate to say because I'm such a big fan of his. I've been watching his, YouTube channel, Life According to Jimmy, for like a long time now. I loved him on American Vandal. I usually really do love him as a comedic actor. I think he's hilarious, but here, I don't know, I thought he was really annoying, and I don't think he really served this role very well, to be honest. I don't think that he was miscasted necessarily. I just think it might have been the character. I mean, I can't tell if it was really his acting or if it was the character, but just overall, I really wasn't a huge fan of him at all, and again, he's usually a huge standout for me, but here, I just did not think this role suited him very well. Like Bautista and Kumail Nanjiani, the film serves them very well. I don't think it serves Jimmy Tatro very well, but overall, the cast, for the most part, does do a really good job. But now let's get to the directing and the writing here, which I really do enjoy the directing here for sure. Now, Michael Dowse is not a director that I'm too familiar with. I actually haven't seen most of his films, or really any of them, I think, prior to this. But what he did here, I thought he overall did a really good job with. The comedy is quite consistent. I was laughing very frequently throughout it. The film knows to be really silly, and he does a good job with that, but he also incorporates some really nice dramatic stuff. There is actually some stuff that I wasn't expecting. The film can cut deep a bit into these characters, and he knows when to strike the balance quite well. It is more of the former than the latter, but I thought he incorporated those two elements quite well. He definitely does have a style here, and I liked what he did in this film. I think his directing was really good. The writing as well, I was also very impressed with. Because, yes, on the surface, this seems like a very basic concept. And, yeah, there are definitely a lot of cliches here. You know, Kumail is someone who is very stressed out. He's someone who can be a bit of a wimp at times. He really isn't that tough at all. He is very much just, he's very much a pushover. He's with this girl that clearly doesn't give a shit about him, but he likes her, so he constantly gives her, like, sexual favors and things like that. And he also has this boss that's just an absolute dick to him, but he takes it. And then you have someone like Vic who, you know, he is a cop and things like that, but there's a little bit more to them than just that, especially when it comes to Vic, which is something I really did appreciate. Yes, he is a cop, and he has been through a lot. There's a personal tragedy that he's going through that I'm not going to reveal because the trailers really didn't give it away at all. Which I'm honestly surprised about that they didn't give it away, but they actually did a really good job with not spoiling what he's actually going through, so I'm not going to reveal it either. But let's just say he's been through a lot, more than just the average cop has, and they do a really good job actually with diving into this character, what he's been through, how this has, you know, kind of fractured his relationship with his daughter, and I think overall they did a really good job with writing that character, and the contrast between him and Stu, someone who is fairly positive and tries to make the best out of every situation, I actually thought worked quite well. You really do understand why these two don't like each other at first, but also how they really do bring out the best in each other and get each other to change for the better. And sure, we've seen this in other comedies, but this film does it well. They do a good job with that, and I definitely really did enjoy that for sure, and I thought overall that story was really well done. They do a good job with getting you to like these two characters. They are very likable, and sure, like I said, Vic can be very much, he can be a bit of an ass at times, but because of the stuff he's been through, you really do understand it, and I think they do a good job with getting you to really like both of these characters for sure. And this might come as a shock to some people, but even though the movie is called Stuber, it really is Bautista's character's film. Like, it's about him, which was not something that I was really expecting. Again, the movie's called Stuber. You would think it's about him, but he really is more the supporting player here. He is the reactionary role, while Bautista, a lot of anything like story-wise really surrounds his character, and they do a good job of that. But again, they give Stu enough to where he does feel like a fully fleshed out character. Both of them really do feel like fully fleshed out characters, and I think they do a good job with that for sure. But like I said, why we watch this film is because of the comedy, and it definitely does deliver for sure. There are a lot of great gags in this film. There's a lot of fun stuff they do with where if you've ever taken an Uber ride, and I'm just talking about like frequently, like I will frequently take Uber rides, but if you do it, once, I think you'll be able to pick up on some of the stuff they're doing in this film. There's definitely a lot of great nods to certain things that, if you've been in an Uber ride, there's definitely a lot of references towards that, and all of those felt really good, and it felt organic. It didn't feel like a commercial for Uber, which I think is going to be a big, worry of people going into this film. Is this going to be an actual film, or is it just going to be like a commercial for Uber? I'm happy to say that's not the case. It does a good job with keeping its focus on the story, and again, considering how obsessed Stu is with it, it makes sense why they be constantly referencing that stuff. So that really wasn't a huge problem for me at all, and I think they do a good job with that for sure. Like I said, there's a lot of great comedy, especially when you have Stu having to do something that he just normally wouldn't do. That stuff works quite well, and I think they handle that quite well, definitely very well for sure. So the writing I definitely really do like here. It's not perfect though. There are definitely a couple things that do hold this film back. The central mystery of it all, like the central sort of story, is not all that interesting. It really is just they're going after these drug dealers, and you know, they are running into them left and right, and they need to try to apprehend them finally. This has been a case that Vic has been going on for a while, but because of what Vic is going through, there is a bit more of a personal stake into this. It's not just another case that he's solving, and I think this film does a good job with that. You know, a lot of the time in comedies, these things can be very, you know, it can feel very formulaic, but I think the film does enough to make it so it doesn't feel as formulaic, and that's something I didn't appreciate about it overall. But I will say the actual sort of thing that they're solving, it's just not terribly interesting, and they don't focus a lot on it, and that might be a problem for some people, but it wasn't really a huge problem for me. So the writing overall, I think, was definitely really good. The cinematography here definitely is really good for sure. There's a lot of really fun action scenes and things like that, and nothing really sticks out, but overall, solid cinematography. The score I definitely did enjoy as well, and the editing. The film is an hour and a half, and honestly, it really did fly by. There really wasn't a time in this film where it did, well, there were a couple times, but for the most part, I thought this film was very well paced, and I was really into it for the most part, and just overall was very entertaining, and I don't think there's anything they really needed to add. So yeah, I thought that stuff was definitely really good. As for flaws, aside from the other stuff I've mentioned, I already talked about Jimmy Tatro, and yeah, his character just didn't really work for me. There's sort of a redemption arc for him at the end, and I just don't think it works very well. It felt kind of awkward, and it's supposed to be funny for sure, but it just didn't really work for me. I don't know, just something about what they were doing with his character I just wasn't really into all that much. And I don't think they handled that all that well. Also, as much as I do like Iko Uwais, I thought at first, for the first, like, 2 acts, he was actually very underused. They really didn't give him a lot to do. They do make up for that in the 3rd act, for sure. It's not like a mile 22 situation where he just feels completely wasted in this movie, but considering how dynamic of an actor he was, I would have liked him to have a little bit of a bigger role, because just here, he does play a good villain. He definitely does a really good job. They give him a lot of good stuff in the 3rd act. It takes a while, and I wish we could have gotten just a little bit more of him every so often. Also, there is a relationship that's revealed at the end of this movie, and it just felt very forced. It didn't really work for me in the way that it should. It's supposed to feel a little bit silly, but it just didn't really work in the way I think that they wanted it to. Also, this film can be very, very predictable for sure, even though, you know, I didn't really have a huge problem with it. There is one reveal that happens in the 3rd act of the movie, and I saw it coming from a mile away. It wasn't really shocking at all to me. I definitely knew where they were going with it. They telegraphed it very early on, and it just wasn't particularly shocking, and I don't think it really worked all that well. But again, I was having enough fun with the movie that is stuff that I can overall overlook. Other than that, though, I had a lot of fun with this film. Now, again, Stuber, it's not anything that is game-changing. It's nothing that you need to, like, seek out right now. But if you just want a really fun time at the movies, I think Stuber will suffice you for sure. I think it is a good way to spend 90 minutes or so at the movies. And overall, I definitely had a very good time with it. It works off of the chemistry of its 2 actors quite well. Dave Bautista, especially, I think really does step up here. It really is his movie, and I think they do a good job with delving into, you know, stuff with him for sure. I think all of that stuff is definitely very well done. There are actually some really good arcs for these characters that I wasn't really expecting. It's definitely very funny, and just overall, it's a definition, just a really entertaining film, and I'm definitely going to give Stuber overall a B. So over, guys, in my review of Stuber. Let me know what you guys saw of this movie overall, left your thoughts, and we'll see you guys in my next video, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.